April 20th, 1889, a man destined to shake the world was born in Braunau am Inn, Austria. His name was Adolf Hitler. His early life was marred with familial discord. His father, Alois Hitler, was a stern, irritable man whose authoritarian parenting style often clashed with young Adolf's fiery spirit. Yet it was his mother, Clara, who provided a nurturing and loving environment, fostering a deep bond that Hitler would carry throughout his life. Young Adolf was not a typical child. He had a flair for the arts, a passion ignited by his mother's support. His sketches of landscapes and portraits were a testament to his talent. He dreamt of studying at the esteemed Vienna Academy of Art, a dream that was abruptly crushed when he was rejected from the institution. Little did the world know, this rejection would become a turning point, setting in motion a series of events that would reverberate through history. In the aftermath of World War I, a disillusioned Hitler found a new purpose in the German Workers' Party. The party was a small political group then, but Hitler, with his fiery speeches and charismatic persona, saw potential in it. In the early days, Hitler was just a member, an army spy sent to keep tabs on the party. But the more he involved himself, the more he found resonance with the party's nationalist, anti-Semitic and anti-Marxist ideas. It didn't take long for him to leave behind his observer role and become an active participant. Hitler's oratory skills were unmatched. His speeches, filled with fervent nationalism and a promise of a brighter future, struck a chord with the masses. The more he spoke, the more people listened. And the more they listened, the more they believed. Hitler, the once anonymous soldier, was fast becoming a force to be reckoned with in German politics. In 1920, Hitler proposed a new name for the party, the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or the Nazi Party for short. With this, he also introduced a 25-point program that outlined the party's political agenda. Among these points were the unification of all Germans, the rejection of the Treaty of Versailles, and the demand for additional territories for the German people. But Hitler's ambition didn't stop at renaming the party and setting a new agenda. He wanted more. He wanted leadership. And in 1921, he got his wish. Through a series of political maneuvers and by leveraging his growing popularity, Hitler forced the party's founder, Anton Drexler, to resign, effectively making him the new leader of the Nazi Party. By 1921, Hitler had seized control of the Nazi Party, setting the stage for a decade of political maneuvering. From the ashes of a war-torn nation, Hitler was steadily building an empire. The Nazi Party was no longer a mere political group. Under Hitler, it was a movement, a wave of change that was about to sweep over Germany and the world. The stage was set for the rise of one of history's most infamous dictators. The year 1933 marked the beginning of Hitler's reign over Germany. The rise to power of Adolf Hitler, a man whose name would become synonymous with tyranny, was a series of calculated moves and fortunate events. It was in the post-World War I era, amidst the economic turmoil and social unrest, that Hitler found fertile ground to sow the seeds of his ambitious plans. In the early 30s, Germany was a nation in distress, grappling with relentless economic depression and political instability. It was during these trying times that Hitler, with his charismatic speeches and promises of a prosperous future, managed to capture the hearts and minds of the German people. His appointment as Chancellor in January 1933 by President Hindenburg was a pivotal moment. This position gave Hitler the political leverage he needed to carry out his plans. However, it was the Reichstag fire a month later that truly set the stage for Hitler's absolute power. The fire, which gutted the German parliament building, was blamed on the communists, an accusation that Hitler used to his advantage. In the wake of the fire, Hitler urged President Hindenburg to pass the Reichstag fire decree. This decree suspended many civil liberties, giving Hitler and his Nazi party the power to arrest and imprison their political adversaries without trial. This was a critical step in consolidating his power and silencing any opposition. The Enabling Act, passed in March of the same year, was the final nail in the coffin for Germany's democracy. This act allowed Hitler to enact laws without the approval of the Reichstag or German parliament. He could now rule by decree, effectively turning Germany into a totalitarian state under his control. With the Enabling Act, Hitler had effectively dismantled Germany's democracy and replaced it with a brutal dictatorship. The stage was set for one of the darkest epochs in human history, a time when power and ruthlessness would cast a long and ominous shadow over the world. Hitler's reign was marked by an iron fist and a relentless pursuit of racial purity. At the zenith of his power, Hitler's ruthless acts were enacted through a series of laws and policies that forever marked a dark period in human history. The Nuremberg laws, enacted in 1935, were a critical instrument in this relentless pursuit. These laws stripped German Jews of their citizenship, banning marriages and extramarital intercourse between Jews and Germans, and prohibiting the employment of German women under 45 in Jewish households. The Nuremberg laws created an institutionalized and legal form of anti-Semitism, setting the stage for the atrocities to come. But Hitler's ambitions weren't confined to the borders of Germany. An aggressive foreign policy marked the late 30s, with Hitler's eyes set on territorial expansion. The annexation of Austria and the Sudetenland region of Czechoslovakia were the early indicators of this expansionist policy. Hitler's territorial ambitions were not curtailed by diplomatic negotiations or international peace agreements. Instead, they culminated in the invasion of Poland in 1939, sparking the beginning of World War II. World War II was not just a conflict among nations, but it also provided the backdrop for one of the most horrifying acts of genocide in human history, the Holocaust. Hitler's vision of racial purity found its most brutal manifestation in the systematic extermination of 6 million Jews. Concentration camps such as Auschwitz and Treblinka became assembly lines of death, with gas chambers and mass shootings extinguishing lives on an unimaginable scale. The horrors of the Holocaust and the devastation of World War II were the gruesome hallmark of Hitler's peak of power. The world watched in horror as Hitler's regime committed acts of unprecedented cruelty and destruction. It was a time of extreme power, but also of ruthless acts that have left indelible scars on the pages of history. The tide of war began to turn against Hitler and the Third Reich. As World War II raged on, Hitler's ambitious plans began to unravel. The turning point came with the failed invasion of the Soviet Union. Operation Barbarossa, as it was known, was a monumental military campaign. Hitler's plan was to swiftly conquer the vast Soviet lands, but what he encountered was a ferocious and unyielding resistance. The harsh Russian winters, coupled with the tenacity of the Red Army, proved to be a formidable challenge. Hitler's army, once thought invincible, was forced into a grueling retreat. This marked the beginning of the end for the Third Reich. Meanwhile, a new front was opening in Western Europe. The Allied forces, led by the United States, the United Kingdom, and other nations, began to advance from the west. The D-Day landings in June of 1944 marked a significant turning point in the war. The Allies were now pushing back against Hitler's forces on multiple fronts, and the tide of war was shifting rapidly. As the situation deteriorated, Hitler's behavior became increasingly erratic. He began to lose grip on reality, blaming his generals for the failures and demanding impossible feats from his soldiers. His orders grew more desperate and his strategies more reckless, revealing a man under immense pressure. In the end, it was clear that the Third Reich was crumbling. Hitler's dream of a 1,000-year empire was reduced to ruins in a matter of years. The Soviet Red Army was advancing on Berlin, and the Allied forces were closing in from the west. Hitler, once a man feared by millions, was now cornered. As Allied forces closed in, Hitler committed suicide in his bunker on April 30th, 1945, bringing an end to his reign of terror. His death marked the fall of the Third Reich, a brutal regime that had caused untold suffering and loss. His fall served as a stark reminder of the perils of unchecked power and the terrifying potential of a single man's ambition. Hitler's death marked the end of the Third Reich, but his legacy continues to haunt the world. The dust of World War II eventually settled, revealing a landscape scarred by the shocking brutality of Hitler's regime. The world, in a desperate bid for justice, convened the Nuremberg Trials, seeking to hold accountable those responsible for the atrocities. Tales of horror unfolded, revealing the chilling extent of Hitler's rule, a reign of terror that had brought the world to the brink of annihilation. The trials served as a stark reminder of the human capacity for evil when blinded by hate and prejudice. And yet the shadow of Hitler's rule reaches far beyond the courtroom. It is a ghost that lingers in the pages of history, a chilling warning from the past of the destructive power of hate and intolerance. Hitler's life serves as a chilling reminder of the destructive power of hate and intolerance. Remember to subscribe for more tales of tyrants.